The holographic display flickered to life aboard the UES Vindication, casting Admiral Cale Torvin's weathered face in blue light. The alien transmission had been decoded moments ago, and its contents made his blood run cold, not from fear, but from fury. "Humans of Terra," the Hegemarch's translator droned in perfect standard, "your pathetic resistance ends now. We are the Vrextal Empire, conquerors of 700 star systems. Your world will burn unless you surrender within 72 hours. Consider this mercy. No other species has been granted such consideration." The transmission cut, leaving the bridge in deadly silence. Torvin's knuckles whitened as he gripped the command rail. Around him, his officers waited for orders that would determine humanity's fate. "Admiral," Communications Officer Lyra Nexon spoke first, her voice barely steady. "Long-range sensors confirm their fleet strength. 3,000 vessels, including 47 dreadnoughts. They've positioned themselves at the edge of the Sol system." Navigator Rask Kelwind pulled up tactical displays. "Their technology is at least 2 centuries ahead of ours, sir. Energy shields we can barely scratch, plasma cannons that can crack a moon." Torvin studied the enemy formation through the view screen. The Vrextal ships hung in space like metallic predators, their crimson hulls gleaming with an almost organic sheen. They'd swept across the galaxy like a plague, leaving dead worlds in their wake. No species had ever successfully resisted them, until now. "They made one critical mistake," Torvin said quietly, his voice cutting through the tension. "They gave us 72 hours. Chief Engineer Voss Grimnar looked up from his console. "Sir, even with every ship in the fleet, we're outnumbered 10-1. Their shields alone are powered by their overconfidence," Torvin interrupted. "Pull up the stellar cartography. Show me their homeworld." The display shifted to show Vrexmora Prime, a massive world orbiting a binary star system 800 light-years away. It was heavily fortified, surrounded by orbital defense platforms and protected by natural asteroid fields that had been weaponized over millennia. "They think we're trapped," Torvin continued, his lips curving into a predator's smile. "They think we'll cower and beg. They don't understand what desperation can accomplish when it's backed by human ingenuity." He turned to his senior staff. "Grimnar, I need you to strip every non-essential system from our fastest ships. Remove life support, crew quarters, weapons, everything except engines and navigation. We're going to need speed more than firepower." "Admiral," Tactical Officer Nix Bloodspear interjected, "even if we could reach their homeworld, their defenses—" "Won't matter if they're not expecting us," Torvin said. "Nexon, send a priority. Burst transmission to every human colony, every research station, every mining outpost. Tell them to prepare for Project Lazarus." The officers exchanged glances. Project Lazarus was theoretical, a desperate gambit that existed only in classified files deemed too dangerous to ever implement. "Sir," Kelwin said slowly, "Lazarus could destabilize an entire star system. The collateral damage will be acceptable," Torvin cut him off. "They want to show us mercy by giving us time to surrender. Instead, we'll use that time to show them what happens when you corner a species that refuses to die quietly." The Admiral walked to the view screen, staring out at the Vrextal fleet. "Begin immediate preparations. In 71 hours, we're going to do something no species in their conquered galaxy has ever done." "What's that, sir?" Nexon asked. Torvin's reflection in the transparent steel showed a man transformed by necessity into something harder than diamond. "We're going to make them wish they'd never heard of humanity." 68 hours until the ultimatum expired. The Sol system buzzed with frantic activity as humanity's last desperate gamble took shape. Admiral Torvin stood in the war room aboard. Vindication, surrounded by holographic displays showing ship movements across human space. Every vessel capable of void travel was converging on predetermined coordinates, but not where the Vrextal expected. "Status report," he commanded. Chief Engineer Grimnar's voice crackled through the comm. "We've successfully stripped 47 vessels down to bare essentials, Admiral. They're little more than engines with navigation systems now, but they'll do Mach 15 in hyperspace." Dr. Zivin Korath, head of the Lazarus Project, stepped forward. Her usually pristine lab coat was stained with coolant, and her eyes were bloodshot from sleepless nights. "The stellar manipulation devices are ready for deployment. Theoretical calculations suggest a 93% chance of success, assuming we can get within range." "And the remaining 7%? Torvin asked. "Complete annihilation of our strike force and probable system-wide stellar collapse," she replied matter-of-factly. "But given our alternatives, I'd say those are acceptable odds." Communications Officer Nexon interrupted from her station. "Admiral, we're receiving another transmission from the Vrextal fleet." The holographic display materialized again, showing the imposing figure of War Master Kethral, the Vrextal field commander. His species resembled oversized mantises, with chitinous armor naturally grown from their exoskeletons and forearms ending in razor-sharp claws. "Humans," Kethral's voice was like grinding metal. "We detect increased activity in your system. Do not mistake movement for hope. Your ships are primitive toys compared to our arsenal. Surrender now, and we will make your extinction swift." The transmission ended, and Torvin smiled coldly. "Perfect. They're watching our fleet movements in system. They have no idea what's happening beyond their sensor range." Navigator Kelwind pulled up a tactical display. "Strike Team Alpha has reached the staging area at Wolf 359. Strike Team Beta is in position at Proxima Centauri. All vessels report ready for Phase 2. Excellent." Torvin activated the secure channel to the strike teams. "This is Admiral Torvin to all units. Operation Carthage is a go, remember? You're not trying to win a battle. You're delivering a message." The plan was audacious in its simplicity. While the Vrextal focused on the obvious threat, humanity's main fleet preparing for a last stand in Sol, two small strike forces had secretly deployed to staging areas. Their mission: reach the Vrextal homeworld using routes the enemy couldn't possibly predict. Dr. Korath had spent years studying stellar mechanics, specifically how binary star systems could be destabilized through careful manipulation of their gravitational fields. Project Lazarus weaponized that research. The beauty of their arrogance, Torvin explained to his senior staff, is that they've never been surprised. Every species they've conquered fought conventionally, fleet against fleet, weapon against weapon. They can't conceive of an enemy that would bypass their military entirely. Tactical Officer Bloodspear frowned at the displays. "Sir, even if our strike teams reach Vrexmora Prime, the orbital defenses won't matter," Torvin interrupted. "We're not attacking their defenses. We're attacking their sun." The revelation stunned the bridge crew into silence. Attacking a star was beyond warfare. It was cosmic vandalism on an unimaginable scale. "The Vrextal binary system is naturally unstable," Dr. Korath explained. "Their civilization has existed for millennia by carefully managing that instability. But if we can introduce the right gravitational disruption at the precise moment—" "Their star goes nova," Grimnar finished, his voice awed, "taking their homeworld and everything in the system with it." "Along with our strike teams," Kelwind added grimly. Torvin nodded. "They volunteered knowing the cost. Every person on those ships understands they're not coming home. But their sacrifice will send a message that echoes across the galaxy." He turned to address the bridge crew directly. "The Vrextal have conquered 700 systems because no one ever made them pay a real price for their aggression. Today, we change that equation." The countdown timer showed 64 hours remaining. In the distance, the Vrextal fleet waited with predatory patience, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had no idea that death was already racing toward their homeworld at impossible speeds, carried by humans who had chosen annihilation over surrender. "Signal the strike teams," Torvin ordered. "Begin final approach to Vrex Mora Prime. And may whatever gods watch over humanity forgive us for what we're about to do." 56 hours to ultimatum. In the depths of space near Vrexamora Prime, Strike Team Alpha emerged from hyperspace like ghosts materializing from the void. Commander Thex Valorian, leading the 23 ships of Alpha Team, felt his modified vessel shudder as it dropped back into normal space. Through the view screen, the Vrextal Homeworld hung before them, a massive sphere of crimson and gold, surrounded by a constellation of orbital defense platforms that could annihilate entire fleets. "All ships, maintain communication silence," Valorian whispered into his headset. "Remember, we're not here to fight their navy. We're here to kill their star." Dr. Mira Voidhawk, the stellar physicist aboard his ship, was already calibrating the Lazarus devices. Her fingers danced across holographic controls as she analyzed the binary star system that had birthed the Vrextal Empire. "The gravitational resonance is perfect," she murmured. "The primary star is in late-stage fusion, and the secondary is already showing signs of instability. If we can introduce harmonic disruption at the L4 Lagrange point—" "Plain English, Doctor," Valorian said. "We can cause both stars to collapse simultaneously. The resulting supernova will sterilize everything within 50 light-years." The magnitude of what they were attempting settled over the crew like a shroud. They weren't just planning to destroy a world. They were planning to unmake an entire stellar region. Meanwhile, 800 light-years away in Sol System, Admiral Torvin watched the Vrextal fleet with calculating eyes. The enemy had moved closer, their confidence growing with each passing hour. "They're preparing for orbital bombardment," Nexon reported. "Energy signatures suggest they plan to begin systematically destroying our cities once the ultimatum expires." Torvin studied the tactical display. The Vrextal had arranged their ships in perfect formation, a testament to their military precision and complete certainty of victory. It was exactly the kind of rigid thinking he was counting on. "Signal our fleet to begin the charade," he ordered. "Make it obvious we're preparing for a last stand. I want them focused entirely on us." Humanity's remaining ships began moving into defensive positions around Earth, broadcasting on frequencies they knew the Vrextal were monitoring. False communications spoke of desperate last-minute weapon upgrades and evacuation plans for the civilian population. Back at Vrexamora Prime, Commander Valorian guided his strike team through the outer asteroid fields that served as the system's natural defenses. The Vrextal had weaponized these rocks over millennia, turning them into automated sentries that could detect and destroy intruders. "Passive sensors only," he reminded his team. "If they detect us now, this whole mission fails." The modified ships drifted through the asteroid field like metal debris, their heat signatures masked and their engines running silent. It was a technique perfected by human miners working in dangerous asteroid fields, something the Vrextal, with their overwhelming technological superiority, had never needed to learn. Dr. Voidhawk monitored their progress while making final calculations for the Lazarus deployment. "The stellar manipulation devices need to be placed at precise coordinates," she explained to the crew. "We'll have approximately 14 minutes between deployment and stellar collapse. After that—" She didn't need to finish. Everyone aboard knew they were riding a one-way ticket to oblivion. As they penetrated deeper into the system, the true scope of Vrextal civilization became apparent. Massive space habitats orbited the homeworld, each one housing billions of the insectoid aliens. Industrial platforms harvested solar energy on an unimaginable scale, feeding the war machine that had conquered most of the galaxy. "Look at all of it," whispered Pilot Kex Nightfall from the helm. "Millions of years of evolution, billions of lives, all built on the bones of 700 dead civilizations," Valorian replied coldly. "They chose this path when they decided conquest was preferable to coexistence." The strike team continued their silent approach, each ship carrying a piece of humanity's final gambit. Behind them, the void stretched empty. No rescue was coming, no extraction was planned. They were ghosts, delivering a message from a species that refused to die quietly. In Sol's system, the countdown continued. 51 hours remaining. War Master Kethrall stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the primitive human fleet with contempt. "Their desperation amuses me," he clicked to his subordinates. "See how they scramble like insects before the flame." He had no idea that at that very moment those same insects were creeping through his home system, carrying the fire that would consume everything he had ever known. The hunt was no longer theoretical. Humanity's predators had found their prey. Now came the killing stroke. 14 hours until ultimatum expiration. Strike Team Alpha had reached the inner system of Rex Mora Prime, threading between orbital defense platforms that could have vaporized them with a single shot. Commander Valorian's hands were steady on the controls despite the magnitude of what lay ahead. Through his ship's sensors, he could detect the massive energy signatures of the binary stars, two stellar giants locked in an ancient dance that had birthed and sustained the Vrextal Empire for millennia. "Deployment positions confirmed, Dr. Voidhawk announced. "All Lazarus devices are showing green. We have one shot at this. The gravitational calculations are so precise that even a microsecond delay could throw off the entire sequence." The strike team had spread out across the inner system, each ship carrying a stellar manipulation device to a predetermined coordinate. The Lazarus Project represented the pinnacle of human theoretical physics, the ability to artificially trigger gravitational cascade failures in binary star systems. "This is Valorian to all ships," the commander broadcast on encrypted channels. "You volunteered for this mission knowing the cost. In a few minutes, we're going to accomplish something no species in galactic history has ever done. We're going to make the Vrextal Empire pay for their crimes." 800 light-years away, Admiral Torvin watched the final countdown with grim satisfaction. The Vrextal fleet had moved into final position, their weapons charging for what they believed would be humanity's execution. Incoming transmission. "From the Vrextal flagship," Nexon reported. War Master Kethrall appeared on the holographic display, his four arms spread in a gesture of contemptuous victory. "Your time expires in hours, humans. Your fleet is pathetic, your technology primitive, your resistance meaningless. Surrender now and we will grant you the mercy of—" The transmission cut abruptly as every human ship in Sol's system suddenly powered down. Their engines went dark, their weapon systems deactivated, their shields collapsed. From the Vrextal perspective, it appeared that humanity had suffered a catastrophic system failure. "What are they doing?" Kethrall demanded of his tactical officers. "Unknown, War Master. All human vessels appear to have lost power simultaneously. They're drifting dead in space." It was exactly what Torvin had planned. The apparent system failure would draw the Vrextal closer, making them believe victory was at hand. Meanwhile, his ships were running on minimal power, waiting for the signal that would change everything. At Rex Mora Prime, the moment had arrived. "All ships report ready for Lazarus deployment," Valorian announced. "Synchronization in 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark." 23 stellar manipulation devices activated simultaneously across the Vrextal home system. Each device was no larger than a probe, but they carried technology that could unravel the fundamental forces holding the binary stars together. Dr. Voidhawk watched her instruments with scientific fascination and human terror. Gravitational cascade initiated. The primary star is beginning harmonic resonance with the secondary. We have 13 minutes and 47 seconds until critical collapse. The effect was invisible to the naked eye, but the gravitational sensors told the story. The careful balance that had maintained the binary system for millions of years was coming apart, artificial fluctuations building toward an inevitable crescendo. "Message probe away," Valorian reported, launching a single high-speed courier toward the edge of the system. It carried a recording that would eventually reach human space, proof of what they had accomplished here. On the surface of Rexmora Prime, seismic sensors began detecting unusual stellar fluctuations. The Vrextal had monitored their unstable sun for millennia, but what they were seeing now defied explanation. Impossible readings from the stellar. "Monitoring stations," reported Science Director Velthak to the Planetary Command Center. "Both stars are showing synchronized gravitational anomalies. This pattern, it cannot be natural." The realization hit the Vrextal leadership like a physical blow. Somehow, impossibly, their enemies had reached their homeworld. Not with ships or weapons, but with something far more devastating: the power to kill stars. Emergency transmissions. Flooded subspace as the Vrextal Empire's most secure world realized it was under attack. But the nearest fleet was light years away, and time was measured in minutes. 9 minutes to stellar collapse, Dr. Voidhawk announced calmly. "The cascade is irreversible now. Both stars will go supernova within seconds of each other. Commander," Valorian opened a channel to his entire strike team. "You magnificent bastards, we actually did it! In 8 minutes, the Vrextal Empire is going to learn what happens when you threaten humanity." Throughout the inner system, the gravitational distortions grew stronger. Orbital platforms began drifting from their positions as the fundamental forces that held the system together started failing. On Rexmora Prime, billions of Vrextal watched their sky with growing horror as their twin suns began to pulse with unnatural light. The countdown continued. 7 minutes, 6 minutes, 5. At 4 minutes to stellar collapse, every Vrextal in the system finally understood the terrible truth. They were all going to die, killed by a species they had dismissed as primitive insects. The humans had kept their promise. They would not surrender. Instead, they had claimed the ultimate victory. 3 minutes to stellar collapse. Across the Vrexmora system, panic spread like wildfire through the quantum communication networks. Commander Valorian watched through his ship's sensors as the binary stars began their death dance. The primary star, a massive red giant, was pulsing with increasing intensity as artificial gravitational waves tore at its core. The secondary, a white dwarf companion, had begun shedding its outer layers in brilliant cascades of superheated plasma. "It's beautiful," whispered Dr. Voidhawk, her scientific mind marveling at the cosmic forces they had unleashed. "We've created a controlled supernova cascade. The energy release will be visible from half the galaxy." On Vrexmora Prime, the planet's leadership had abandoned all pretense of order. Supreme Overlord Zekatharan stood in his palace command center, watching feeds from across his empire as the unthinkable became reality. "How?" he demanded of his science advisors. "How did these primitives achieve stellar manipulation? Our own physicists said it was impossible." "The humans," Science Director Velthak's voice trembled. "They must have been more advanced than we believed. This level of precision, the gravitational calculations required, it would take centuries of research. Research they completed while we dismissed them as inferiors," Zektharan said bitterly. "Signal the fleet at Sol System. Tell them—" The transmission cut off as the first gravitational shockwave reached the inner system. Orbital defense platforms, massive structures that had protected the homeworld for millennia, began tumbling out of control as space-time itself rippled around them. 2 minutes to stellar collapse. Back in Sol System, Admiral Torvin received the automated message probe that had escaped the Vrexmora system just ahead of the expanding destruction. The single word it contained was all he needed: success. "All ships, this is Admiral Torvin," he broadcast on open channels, knowing the Vrextal were listening. "Project Lazarus has been completed. Your homeworld dies in 90 seconds. The effect on the Vrextal fleet was immediate and devastating. War Master Kethral's composed facade cracked as he processed the impossible news. "Impossible! Our homeworld is 800 light years away, protected by arrogance, Torvin interrupted, his voice cold as space itself. You wanted to show us the futility of resistance. Instead, we've shown you the price of threatening humanity. Chaos erupted across the Vrextal fleet as individual ship commanders tried to contact their homeworld, only to be met with silence. The quantum communication networks that had connected their vast empire for centuries were going dark as the stellar collapse began affecting subspace itself. 1 minute to stellar collapse. At Vrexamora Prime, the end came with terrible beauty. The binary stars, locked in their final embrace, reached critical mass simultaneously. For a fraction of a second, the system contained more energy than 1,000 normal stars. Then it all went white. The explosion was visible across half the galaxy, a brilliant new star that outshone everything around it. The supernova consumed planets, space stations, orbital habitats, and the entire industrial infrastructure of the Vrextal Empire's heart in a microsecond of cosmic fire. Billions of years of evolution, centuries of galactic conquest, and the accumulated wealth of 700 star systems vanished in an instant. Where the Vrextal homeworld had existed, only expanding plasma and radiation remained. The shockwave traveled outward at the speed of light, carrying the news of what humanity had accomplished. When it finally reached the outer colonies of the Vrextal Empire months later, it would bring with it a simple message. The humans had not surrendered. They had retaliated. In Sol System, the Vrextal fleet hung in stunned silence as they processed the magnitude of their loss. Everything they had fought for, everything their empire represented, had been annihilated by a species they had considered beneath their notice. War Master, one of Kethral's subordinates, reported, his voice hollow. We're receiving surrender. Requests from 37 fleet commanders across the Empire. Without the homeworld's coordination, our forces are fragmenting. Admiral Torvin's voice cut through their despair like a blade. You have 2 choices, War Master. Withdraw from human space immediately and never return, or share your homeworld's fate. We've proven we can kill stars. Don't test our willingness to do it again. The threat hung in space like a loaded weapon. Every Vrextal in the fleet understood that they were no longer the predators. They had become the prey. Commander Valorian and his strike team had been vaporized in the stellar collapse, but their sacrifice had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had shown that even the mightiest empire could be brought down by those desperate enough to pay the ultimate price. The age of easy conquest was over. The galaxy would remember the day the humans killed a star rather than surrender, and that memory would change the balance of power forever. In the expanding cloud of plasma that had once been Vrexamora Prime, the atoms of 23 human heroes mixed with the remains of their enemies, becoming part of the cosmic wind that would spread their story across the universe. They had kept humanity's promise. They had not surrendered. They had claimed more than a homeworld. They had claimed revenge itself. 48 hours after the Vrexamora supernova, the shock waves were spreading far beyond the destroyed system. Admiral Torvin stood in the war room aboard the Vindication, watching intelligence reports flood in from across known space. The Vrextal Empire is collapsing, Intelligence Officer Dana Stormwind reported, her voice filled with professional satisfaction. Without their homeworld's central coordination, their fleet commanders are either surrendering, going rogue, or fighting each other for control of the remaining territories. Navigator Kelwyn pulled up a tactical display showing the galactic TI situation. 37 systems have declared independence from Vrextal rule in the past 2 days. The Hegemarchy's 1,000-year reign is effectively over. But Torvin wasn't celebrating. Victory had come at a cost that would haunt humanity for generations. What's our casualty assessment? Dr. Korath, exhausted from coordinating the aftermath of Project Lazarus, stepped forward with grim statistics. Strike Team Alpha, 23 ships, 473 volunteers, Total loss as expected. Strike Team Beta never engaged. They're returning from their staging area. And the collateral damage? The silence in the room was deafening. Dr. Korath consulted her tablet with trembling hands. Conservative estimates suggest the Vrexmora supernova sterilized 47 inhabited systems. The death toll. She paused, struggling with the numbers. Approximately 800 billion sentient beings. The weight of that number settled over the bridge crew like a shroud. They had won. Humanity was safe, the Vrextal threat eliminated. But the price had been unimaginable. "Sir," Communications Officer Nexon interrupted, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council." The holographic display materialized, showing Ambassador Kyrith Dawnseeker of the Altarian Federation, the closest thing the EW galaxy had to a neutral diplomatic authority. Her normally composed features were drawn with shock and condemnation. "Admiral Torvin," her voice carried the weight of history, "the Council demands an immediate explanation for the destruction of the Vrexmora system. The use of stellar manipulation as a weapon. It's unprecedented. The implications are exactly what we intended," Torvin interrupted. "The Vrextal gave us 72 hours to surrender unconditionally or face extinction. We chose a third option by committing genocide on a scale never before witnessed. 800 billion beings, Admiral. Entire species that had nothing to do with their empire's aggression against humanity." Torvin's expression remained stone cold. "Tell me, Ambassador, how many species has the Galactic Council saved from Vrextal conquest? How many times did your neutral authority intervene when they were systematically exterminating entire civilizations?" The ambassador's silence was damning. For centuries, the Council had watched as the Vrextal Empire expanded, too afraid to challenge their military superiority. The Council hereby condemns humanity's actions and demands. "The Council," Torvin said quietly, "can go to hell." He terminated the connection, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Outside the view screen, the remnants of the Vrextal fleet were withdrawing from Sol system, their retreat marking the end of humanity's darkest hour. "Admiral," Chief Engineer Grimnar spoke carefully, "what they're saying about the casualties, they're not wrong. We killed billions of innocents along with our enemies." Torvin turned to face his senior staff, and they saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. A weight that would never leave him. "Do you think I don't know that?" he asked quietly. "Do you think I'll ever sleep again without seeing those numbers? But tell me, what was the alternative? Surrender and watch as they systematically exterminated every human being in the galaxy?" He walked to the view screen, staring out at the stars that now seemed somehow dimmer. "We made a choice. We chose to survive, whatever the cost. History will judge whether we were heroes or monsters." "Maybe we were both," Dr. Korath said softly. Across the galaxy, the news of humanity's ultimate weapon spread through quantum communication networks. Species that had cowered before Vrextal might suddenly found themselves whispering a new name in fearful reverence. Human. The message was clear. Attack Earth's children, and they would burn your star from the sky rather than submit. It was a reputation bought with the blood of civilizations, but it would keep humanity safe for generations to come. The Vrextal survivors scattered to the galactic rim, broken and bitter. Their empire was dead, their homeworld an expanding nebula of radioactive plasma. But they carried with them a warning that would echo through the cosmos. Never underestimate a species willing to embrace damnation to avoid defeat. 3 days after, the supernova memorial ceremonies began on Earth for the 473 volunteers who had given their lives to save their species. Their names were carved into monuments across every human world, honored as the greatest heroes in their history. But in the quiet moments between the ceremonies, humanity grappled with what they had become. They were no longer the peaceful explorers who had first reached for the stars. They were something harder, more terrible. A species that would commit genocide rather than face extinction. The galaxy would remember Vrex Mora Prime. They would remember that humanity's answer to annihilation was to become annihilation itself. And in the cold equations of galactic politics, that memory would be more valuable than any fleet. 6 months after Vrex Mora Prime became an expanding cloud of stellar debris, the galaxy had settled into an uneasy new order. Admiral Torvin stood on the observation deck of Luna Station, watching. Earth turned slowly beneath him, its blue surface unmarred by the fires of war. They had won. Humanity survived. But victory felt more like a burden than a triumph. "The final reports, Admiral," Dr. Korath approached, carrying a data tablet that contained the complete analysis of Project Lazarus and its aftermath. Her hair had gone completely gray in the months since the supernova. The weight of 800 billion deaths had aged them all. "The Vrextal remnants?" Torvin asked. "Scattered. The largest faction, calling themselves the Exile Fleet, has retreated beyond the galactic rim. Intelligence suggests they're regrouping, but without their industrial base, they pose no immediate threat. The other fragments are too busy fighting each other to threaten anyone else." Torvin nodded, accepting the report without reading it. He had memorized the casualty figures months ago. They haunted his dreams every night. And the Council's response? Officially, humanity is under economic and diplomatic sanctions for crimes against galactic civilization. Unofficially, Korath paused. 3 species have approached our ambassadors requesting mutual defense treaties. They want our protection. It was the galaxy's new reality. Humanity had become both pariah and protector, feared for their willingness to destroy stars, but courted by species who needed that same terrible resolve to defend them. Communications. Officer Nexon's voice echoed through the station's speakers. "Admiral, incoming priority transmission from the Kethmoran Republic. They're requesting immediate assistance with a situation. In the months since Vrexamora's destruction, dozens of species had reached out to humanity with similar requests. Pirates, warlords, and minor empires who had once feared Vrextal retaliation now found themselves facing human intervention instead. The pattern was always the same. Aggressors would push too far, threaten genocide or enslavement, and suddenly find human ships appearing in their systems with a simple message: stand down or share the fate of Vreximora Prime. None had chosen to test humanity's resolve. "Tell the Kethemorans we'll review their request," Torvin replied. "Standard protocol. If their enemies are committing atrocities, we'll intervene. If it's a simple territorial dispute, they're on their own." It was the doctrine humanity had developed in the aftermath of their Pyrrhic victory. They would use their terrible reputation only to prevent the kind of systematic genocide the Vrextal had practiced. They had become the galaxy's nuclear option, devastating, but reserved for only the most extreme circumstances. "Admiral," Navigator Kelwind approached with another report. "The Memorial Project is requesting final approval for the Valorian Monument." Torvin smiled sadly. The memorial to Commander Valorian and his strike team would be visible from orbit, a crystalline spire that would catch and reflect sunlight, ensuring that their sacrifice was never forgotten. Similar monuments were being constructed on every human world. Approved. They earned their place in history. Through the observation deck's transparasteel, Torvin could see construction ships building humanity's new defense grid. The lessons of Vrextal aggression had not been lost. Never again would Earth be caught so unprepared. The new installations could detect and intercept threats from hundreds of light years away. But the real defense wasn't technological. It was the reputation they had bought with blood and horror. The knowledge that humanity would choose mutual destruction over submission. "Sir," Chief Engineer Grimnar's voice came through the comm, "we're receiving a transmission from the Vrextal Exile Fleet. They want to talk." Torvin's expression hardened. "Put them through." The holographic display materialized, showing a figure Torvin recognized, Fleet Marshal Yek-Theron, one of the few Vrextal commanders who had escaped the Homeworld's destruction. The once proud warrior looked broken, his chitinous armor scarred, and his 4 arms trembling with suppressed rage. "Admiral Torvin," Yek-Theron's voice was barely controlled fury, "you destroyed our entire civilization. Billions of innocents died because of your barbarism." "Yes," Torvin replied simply. "They did, just as billions of innocents died during your empire's 1,000-year expansion. The difference is that our barbarism ended your ability to commit genocide. Yours was just beginning. You speak of genocide while having committed the greatest act of mass murder in galactic history." Torvin leaned forward, his eyes cold as space itself. "Marshal, you came to our system with 3,000 ships and threatened to exterminate every human being in existence. You gave us 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. We chose to make you pay a price so terrible that no species will ever threaten humanity again. You made us into monsters," Yek-Theron accused. "No," Torvin replied quietly. "We chose to become monsters rather than become extinct. There's a difference." The Vrextal commander's mandibles clicked in frustrated rage. "This conversation is pointless. We will rebuild. We will return. And when we do—" "You'll find us waiting," Torvin interrupted, "with better weapons, stronger defenses, and the same willingness to burn the galaxy down rather than kneel. Tell your people, Marshal, humanity remembers. We remember every threat, every ultimatum, every species you've exterminated, and we will never, ever surrender." The transmission ended, leaving the observation deck in contemplative silence. Outside, Earth continued its ancient rotation, peaceful and blue and alive, a world that had chosen to damn itself rather than die quietly. "Do you think they'll try again?" Dr. Korath asked. "Eventually," Torvin replied, "but not in our lifetime. Maybe not in our children's lifetimes. The memory of Rex Mora Prime will echo through the cosmos for centuries." He turned from the view screen, looking at the men and women who had helped him save their species through the most terrible act in galactic history. They were all changed, marked by the weight of what they had done, but unbroken. "We won," he said simply. "We survived, and we sent a message that will keep our children safe long after we're gone." The galaxy had learned a fundamental truth. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. They would not surrender, would not submit, would not fade away with dignity. When faced with extinction, they would drag their enemies down with them, making the price of victory so high that it became indistinguishable from defeat. In the months and years that followed, the Vrex Mora doctrine became the foundation of human foreign policy. Diplomacy when possible, economic pressure when necessary, but always with the implicit threat of stellar destruction for those who pushed too far. The galaxy was safer now, though at a cost that would haunt human conscience for generations. Species that had once preyed on the weak now faced a choice: coexistence or annihilation. Most chose coexistence. The memorial services for the Lazarus Strike Team continued every year, their names read aloud in ceremonies across human space. They had given their lives not just to save their species, but to transform the very nature of galactic civilization. As Admiral Torvin walked through the corridors of Luna Station, he passed a wall plaque that had been installed the week after the supernova. It bore the simple inscription that had become humanity's unofficial motto: "They thought we'd surrender. They were wrong." Below it, in smaller text, were the names of every person who had died in the Vrex Mora system, human and alien alike. 800 billion souls, the price of humanity's survival and the galaxy's new peace. The stars outside continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the civilizations that rose and fell in their light. But among those stars, a new equilibrium had been established. The strong no longer preyed on the weak without consequence. The age of easy conquest was over, ended by a species that had proven they would rather rule over ashes than submit to tyrants. Humanity had not just survived, they had evolved. From explorers to warriors to the galaxy's reluctant guardians, they had become something new, a species that would commit any atrocity to prevent their own extinction, but would use that terrible reputation to protect others from the same fate. The Vrextal homeworld was gone, consumed by artificial fire and human determination. But from its ashes had risen something unprecedented, a galaxy where genocide carried consequences, where the strong could not simply devour the weak, where the threat of mutual annihilation enforced an unwilling peace. It was not the ending humanity had wanted, but it was the ending they had chosen. And in the cold equations of survival, that made all the difference. The stars would remember Vrex Mora Prime. They would remember that humanity's answer to extinction was to become extinction itself. And in that memory, in that terrible reputation bought with blood and conscience, lay the promise that no species would ever again face the choice between surrender and annihilation. The galaxy had learned to fear the humans who would not surrender, and that fear would keep the peace for 1,000 years.